Previously, I made a video showing you how to create your own DIY solar charger. It was a single panel, single battery, 12-volt system. And that might work for some people that just need a little bit of a charge, and some people might want something more and are willing to get into more of the complexities to be able to get that more out of it. More complexities, more cost. Just depends on what exactly you're looking for. But this is going into further details on ways that you can change and expand that system. So we're going to first revisit the previous solar charger, just to get refamiliarized with it and know what we're expanding here. We had the solar panel here that's a slash. If you haven't watched the previous video, I would suggest doing that, so that way you can have some better context behind this video. But this is the solar panel, and all my solar panels in this video that I'm going to be talking about, if I don't specify otherwise, they are 12-volt, 100-watt solar panels. And you've got batteries down here that are connected to a solar charge, to a charge controller, solar charge controller. And then we had our loads, which we explained why they weren't directly drawn on here, because that could be done differently. And the batteries on here are going to be 12-volt, 35 amp hour solar batteries. I think I explained it in the previous video. You can use whatever's compatible with your charge controller. But if you're going to use a lead acid, you could use car batteries, you could use whatever is a 12-volt battery. Or if you're running a different voltage charge controller, you can run a different voltage. You need to run the matching voltage for your charge controller. And make sure whatever you do, don't go over the wattage of your charge controller. That's one of the key things you want to avoid, is going over that wattage. So on here we're going to talk about adding multiple solar panels, multiple batteries, or even running a different voltage, which I'm going to explain the voltage thing here as far as why you would want to increase your voltage beyond 12 volts. Me personally, I like to leave it at 12 volts. 12 volts has an advantage because a lot of things are made for 12 volts. Everything made for your car, most of the time, is 12 volt. You've got 12 volt headlights, interior lights, 12 volt bulbs made for all that stuff. So you can use a car interior light bulb as a part of your lighting. You can go down to the auto parts store and get so many things that are 12 volt. It's so common, it's so inexpensive because they make so many of these things. So 12 volt is awesome, and it's awesome if you're keeping your power that you're going to be using close by. You're not running your fridge in one room and your computer in another room. Because there's something called voltage drop that happens when you run electrical power across too much of a distance of your wire. It is going to drop a certain amount of voltage. The higher the voltage, the less of a percentage is lost on that. So that's why if you're going to run it in a bigger area, you want to run a bigger voltage. If you are planning on inverting it too, it would be a more efficient conversion for the inverter, but it will be a more expensive inverter. They make tons of inverters for 12 volt, but ones that would do from 24 or 48, they become more rare and more expensive. While they're more efficient in their operation, they are more expensive as well. So you lose less power in your conversion. It's more efficient, but it's going to be more of an upfront cost. So the less transformation that you have, the better off you are. But I run a lot of 12 volt stuff, and that's the reason why 12 volts is my voltage. But if you did want to transmit it across better distances, you might want to do that and then have a step down transformer and regulation system there, that will run it from different nodes, and that would be easier to do with higher voltages, and then also on those specialty inverters. So that's your reason for going up in voltage if you really wanted to increase your voltage of your system. Now, increasing the number of solar panels without the voltage, just increasing the amount of power generated, that will add watts. In this case, we're working with 100-watt solar panels. So if you're running with one, you're only producing 100 watts of power. So you're able to run that much or charge your batteries by that 100 watts. Adding an additional panel can give you now 200 watts, which means now you can run twice as much, and or, well, more so or, because whatever you're running off of is not charging the batteries or draining the batteries. So whatever your voltage or whatever your wattage is, when you double that, you can charge your batteries in half the time, or you can run twice as much, whatever your arrangement is on that. But you have twice the power. Or if you get 4 or 5 panels, you've got that much more power. So you have faster charging, more that you can run off of more panels. That's your advantage with more panels. With more batteries, you have higher voltage, and or, depending on how they're arranged, which we'll discuss in a little bit, you're going to be able to run, it may also have more amp hour capacity, more ability to store more. You're going to be able to store more power with more batteries, or run at a higher voltage, which at a higher voltage, if you're running a 12-volt light, but you're operating at 24 volts on your batteries, you need a step-down transformer to run that. It's going to make it to where it uses less current than it would have done, so that same amp hour will last longer on that battery. It will not be draining the battery as much, but it will be as it steps down. So when it steps down, it's not going to drain the battery as much. It's going to be about half the drain as far as the amp hour run is, but it's going to run each battery down for that about half. So you've got 2 batteries, let's say they're running at 24 volts. You run them through a transformer. Let's say that was a 1 amp light. That means whatever the transformer itself uses by its inefficiency is also going to be added to this. But instead of running 1 amp hour off your battery per hour that light's on, you're going to be running a little over half an amp hour, because you've also got the transformer to worry about on that. So yeah, more batteries. Bottom line is, more batteries means more time, more voltage options, and more time. So let's take a look at how these things are connected for these arrays. First of all, series versus parallel wiring. Series is over here on the left, parallel is over there on the right. And you'll notice that there's a jumper wire on the series that runs from one positive terminal to the other battery's negative terminal. Very important you make sure that's the other battery, because otherwise you're just creating a direct short. Go to the next battery, hook up to its negative, and then take that battery, either draw its charge. In this case here, this is a 24-volt array, as these are both 12-volt batteries, or they could also be solar panels as well. But whatever these sources are, these could be solar panels as well, so this would be a 24-volt charge from the solar. And then if you're going to hook up more, then yeah, I would take that last positive, instead of running it out, run it to your next battery's negative and run it through that. But you're going to add the voltages of your batteries as you add them to a series array. Now, parallel, on the other hand, you're going to hook up all of your negatives and all of your positives to a negative bus and a positive bus, respectively. And then this is important, too, that we notice that on one battery, on one end of all of those cables here, one end of that goes out as negative, and then the other battery at the opposite end comes out as positive. And that really ensures that you're really utilizing all these batteries, that it's not just taking a short path, just going through one battery and draining that and then going to the next battery. It really uses them all at the same time, provides much better efficiency to wire it that way. So you want to take that negative and draw it off of the opposite end as what you're drawing off the positive. In this case here, we basically created a 12 volt 70 amp hour battery. So I just increased the time that I can run by double, while this other one I just increased the voltage that I'm running at. But there's the advantages also with the voltage too, that while I've increased the voltage, my watts are still the same. So it's gonna, every amp hour is going to last a little bit longer. It just depends on what exactly you're dealing with. My big thing would be, how big of an area am I working in and what am I working with? If I'm just trying to run an inverter, yes, I would go as high a voltage as I can get. If I'm trying to go across a bigger area, I would want higher voltage as well. But if I'm just running the way I do, where I just try and charge something right off that station, 12 volts the way to go, and it's easier to get inverters for them. Alright, so we've taken a look at those two types of wiring, and these will work for both your solar panels or your batteries. And another thing too, just to mention real quick, on any of these things, this is especially useful probably for your series than it is for your parallel. But you could run, say off this top battery, run 2 leads directly off of that to run a little 12 volt thing. I wouldn't try and run a huge amount off of that. But that would, if you drew off early without going to the other battery, that would be 12 volts on that wire. So that would allow you to run, like, say, a little light in your battery compartment without going through the whole conversion system and having to run a separate transformer right there. But light loads only, because if you drain too much on one battery, it'll offset your system. So it'd be for something very small, like a little light or something like that. But that is a possibility. It's much better to keep it all as a series, though, to just not really run. If you're going to run it in series, it's good to just draw off each end. But that would be a way of doing something small. Alright, so now that we take a look at what the series and the parallel wiring does, let's take a look at what that does on more of a mass scale here, such as a nested hybrid array wiring. This is going to be 12 batteries or solar panels, whichever one you want to do. But in this case, I'm going to use batteries for this. And here we can see this is going to be a 48 volt array that is going to produce 105 amp hours at 48 volts. Because I've got, and this is important too, if I'm going to hook up these guys in parallel, I really want these to all be the same voltage. That's ideal for the best efficiency, is to hook them all up in the same voltage. So I've got a 48 volt array here, and that's parallel wired with another 48 volt and another 48 volt, which means 3 35 amp hour 48 volt series arrays are hooked together to make one 105 amp hour 48 volt array. So this is another way that you can really provide a lot of oomph. Now, of course, all these batteries are going to cost you. All these cables are going to cost you a little something. These solar panels are going to cost you. But having your own DIY system like that, you can continue to expand it as you see fit. So we talked about how to expand our solar panels within the capacity of our solar charger, of our solar charge controller. And we talked about how to expand our batteries as much as we want to, and our loads, because we can run those outside of a charge controller. So we can run a bus here that can run as many loads as we want to. We know how to run whatever we want to there, where we have the power on the batteries to support. But what do we do when we want more charging capability than what the charge controller can provide? Now, you could build your own custom charge controller, but that would be a bit more complicated and expensive than cheap charge controllers. So to get those little cheap charge controllers like what you can buy, let's say that the biggest one that you can find in your area is a 500 watt. How do you hook up more than 5 solar panels when you only have 500 watt charge controllers? The other thing that you can do with that is you can run multiple charge controllers, and each charge controller will handle a bank of its limit, because you want to make sure that they never have more watts into it than what it can handle. So I'm going to run each of these charge controllers. If they're 500 watt and I've got 100 watt solar panels, I'm going to hook 5 solar panels to each and every charge controller. And then all of those charge controllers, or if I don't have that same, let's say I've only got 2 charge controllers and 8 solar panels, then in case I'll probably even up the load on my charge controllers and do 4. But if we're really expanding this thing out, I would do, say 5 per, just for our math, 5 solar panels per charge controller. So you have that fully loaded charge controller for its charge capacity. Then for your battery wires, they can go on out to that same battery bank. All those charge controllers can go to your same battery bank and charge the same sets of batteries. And once that battery bank is full, they should all stop charging it. Now the downside with that is there is a little bit of a risk that if one charge controller is faulty, it could ruin the entire bank of batteries. So it's just something to be aware of, but that is how I would expand if I had multiple panels and really wanted to expand this thing and wanted to expand beyond the capacity of the charge controller. I would have the battery wires of those charge controllers, the ones that lead out to the battery leads, just charging the same bank, so that way they would be all charging that huge bank of batteries. So they would each be hooked up to these red and black leads heading out. That would be where my chargers are. And to expand also in that scenario as well, I might run a few things on the load wires of your charge controllers. Just a few things that are meant for like local use for this charging system. Maybe a light over your system to be able to see it out there at night, to be able to turn it on or something like that. But as far as running anything any type of major thing off of that, I wouldn't really count on anything other than like indicator lights or working lights to be able to work on my system at night. Beyond that type of stuff, I really would not work with the load wires. I would run everything directly off the batteries through a array that does it'd have a fuse and it would have a voltage arrestor. If your voltage goes below your battery's safe drop voltage, it would kill it. So those are things that I would be looking at doing, is just running everything there off of those batteries and have them have their own protective circuits, or maybe one big protective circuit for everything if you can build one. But that would be its own system there that would just come right off the battery, and I would not be using the charge controllers in that case if I'm running parallel charge controllers. So that's how I would expand this. As far as my solar panels, batteries, these things are infinitely expandable if you have the money to continue to buy. So you can continue to go on. If you get more money and you want to make the system last longer, you can add an extra row of batteries. Or if you're like me, I'm just going to stick to, to just doing 12 volts. So I'm just going to have a whole bunch of them over there in parallel, but I can continue to add batteries as I see fit to this system. And yeah, you can continue to add panels if you want more charging power, add more batteries for more longevity, and even more charge controllers if you need the capacity. Thank you for watching.